Alright, in this video I'm going to be teaching you how to properly build maps with the Cube 2 engine using large grid sizes and staying in line with the grid and things like that. So I'll sort of explain why that's important, and then I'll go on and give you some examples. So just open up a new map, and alright, so one of the most important reasons you should start getting used to this technique is that it will definitely significantly reduce the amount of FPS lag when players are playing on your map. So if you have tiny cubes everywhere on your map, you're going to get a lot of the engine has to render all those little cubes, and so it's going to put a lot of strain on your FPS. I usually give Forge, the map Forge, as an example. It's not exactly built to the best build, I guess. There's a lot of small cube sizes, everywhere. The ramps and the layout aren't really in line with the grid as best as they can be. Usually if you ever noticed why on Forge you get larger FPS drops than most of the other maps. Of course there's other examples of poor builds out there, but Forge being one of the most popular maps in Sauerbrunn, I usually give that as an example. So now I'm going to show what I mean by that. So say you want to build a platform. If you already have a small, you really need to pay attention to the cube size or grid size you're using, and that of course is the size of this little white square that you build everything with. So if you don't really pay attention to that, and you have a small cube like this already selected, and then you want to build a platform, instinctively you would just do something like this. Just drag it over a large area and then just pull up a few times, and you got your platform. Now that's great and all, but actually if you hit 7 when you're in edit mode, and I actually use this all the time, and you should really get used to editing with it on. Of course sometimes you're gonna have to turn it off, but hit 7 and that turns outline on, and then you can see what I actually just did. Now I made this platform out of all these tiny little cubes, so the engine has to render every single one of them instead of the alternative method, which is really the basis of this video. Now I'm going to show you how to properly do it. So let's just use this large grid size. When you're building a map professionally, like most professional mappers do, you're going to want to use the general rule of thumb is to use as large of a grid size as you can. So right now I'm just building a basic platform. There's nothing in my way that I have to worry about destroying, so I'm going to use as large of a grid size as I can. I don't have to use huge grid sizes, but something like this is good for a platform. So let's just select an area here, and we're going to pull up, and obviously this is a huge platform, not what you really want. So what the technique is to use F, hold down F and then scroll, and you're going to resize the cube down to what you want it to be. So as you can see, this platform here is only made up of 3 cubes here. 3 resized cubes as opposed to the 100 here. So you got the same thing, same idea. We're just made of just 3 cubes. And now not only are you using the least amount of cubes as possible to build this same platform, but it also is nicely in line with the grid. So if you see over here, if I go down to like a decent cube size, you can see that it's there's that little bit sticking out there. That's not really good, because even if these were all built with this size grid, you're gonna have this little bit sticking out here that's gonna have to be rendered as a whole new cube, which is not necessary, because that's just a tiny little bit that you don't really need. If it means making a whole new cube, and I mean like this whole size cube, because I'll sort of explain that a little better. We're gonna use the proper method here. Now, as you can see, this little section that's sticking out here is a whole. It's this entire cube right here, because I just built it like that, obviously. So I just resized this size cube to, you know, be that little size, but it is rendering it as one huge cube. You know, I mean, really a whole extra cube that you don't need. So basically, what I'm getting at here is sort of try and get everything in line like that. You know, that's much better. And then of course that is perfect. You know, that's what you want. So that's just very basic. Now I'm gonna sort of show. Now say I want to add a trim on this platform. Now obviously, you know, in an ideal situation, this would be great, just 3 cubes. However, obviously, once you get detailing within these cubes, it's important to realize that this little platform, this section of the cube, is not just, you know, this level. It is this entire area here. So if I go and edit within that large area, you know, within here with the smaller cube size, it is going to break up these cubes. So it's important to keep in mind. Obviously, that's not a huge deal. This grid size is still a decent one, and obviously you're gonna have to do that sometimes with details. You know, you don't want just a boring blocky map just because, you know, it's efficient. So say I want to add a trim around here. You know, you can see what that does. It breaks up this little cube, so it's no longer this huge one. It's actually made out of these little squares now. So that's just one thing you want to keep in mind. Now you can see also what I'm doing here. I didn't really explain that. I'm using the same technique for trims. So instead of, you know, using a tiny little cube size like this and doing it like that, you know, that's how you might want to do it. But I just showed you how you should do it, because this, you know, the same reason here. You can see this is just 2 cubes for the same exact thing as this one here, which is, you know, 20 cubes or so. You know, another example would be building stairs, or well, let's go over ramps first. So I could do this. If I'm building a ramp, I could do something like this. That's how you might want to do it. Or as you can guess by now, probably, I would just do something like this. Alright, so, and then with stairs, this is how you should get used to building stairs. So instead of building steps, now I'm sure this is getting repetitive by now, but I just want to give you some examples. Instead of building a step like that, you know, use this grid size here, and then resize it to half, you know, half the cube, because, you know, a decent, even in real life, you know, real engineering or architecture, a good step is 1 by 2. So we're going to resize that top cube, basically split it in half, and then you can just keep going like that, and there's a properly built stairwell. Alright, so this is a map of mine that I'm going to use as an example, just because I know where the examples are that I want to use. So take a look at the stairwell, for example, and you can see that it fits perfectly within these 2 large cubes. So I could have had it, you know, the stairwell shifted over a little bit, and I could have part of it sticking out over here. But as I mentioned earlier, that would take up a whole new cube for the engine to render. So I fit it nicely within these 2. You know, it even fits into this large one here, sort of. So that's really something you want to get used to. Just stick within as large of a grid as you can. You know, let's find another example here. This platform might be one. Yep, see, I even this platform fits nicely into this rectangle here, so I don't have any of it sticking out a little bit unnecessarily over here. It fits right up against the wall like that. And here, you can see the wall fits right into that. So hopefully you can sort of get the idea I'm getting at. Alright, I'm going to cover a few more things which I didn't mention. The same idea with building with large geometry and large cube sizes, that also applies to texturing. So whenever you texture a cube, like just one cube, say you want to texture this, that will break up this cube. That will define this cube as one instead of part of this giant area over here. So let me show you an example. Let's just texture this with something random. You can see it breaks it up because it has to now render this cube as something else because it has its own texture. So just keep that in mind as well. Let's rebuild that platform. Even if you have this greatly built platform and you want to texture the middle here differently and then add some trims around, you can see that it actually breaks it up. So just keep that in mind. Obviously you're going to run into situations where you have to do that, and that's fine. This is still made out of a decent sized cube, these little ones. That's great. That's a good size. Another thing to pay attention to is down in the bottom left, you can see all those stats there. The first one is actually WTR. So that's basically that's telling you the amount of cubes that are in your map. So the lower that WTR count, the better. The more efficient your map is going to be. So obviously on the new map right here, it's 0K. So you can't really see a good example here. Let's open up a real map. Let's do Map Horizon. Obviously there's a lot of details there, a lot going on. So there's going to be a lot of small cubes everywhere. Once this loads, so I'll show you what I mean. Alright, now the WTR down there is 85K, so that's not bad. Anything for a capsule flag map, for a large map, anything under 100K is fine. Alright, now I'm going to show you the very popular and fun map Forge. Now if you look here, you see this platform is not exactly, even with this cube size, which is an average, a decent cube size, not the largest, but even within this one, this platform doesn't exactly fit. So what that means is it could easily have been shifted over to here, and it would only be using 3 squares. Instead, it's got it off grid, so it's using 4. Then over here, you got this pathway. It's 2, and then this wall. If we're sort of looking at solid objects. So this wall could have been moved back a little bit more, and instead of using an extra square like this, it could be back in there, and then all this whole cube would not be necessary. Alright, and then obviously all these little tiles, let me remip. Obviously if you don't know what remip is, you should get used to using that. When you calculate, it also does a remip, but alright, so you can see what that does. It basically optimizes all the cubes again. So what I'm trying to show you is these little tiles, they are breaking up these cubes. So it could easily be, this could be one solid cube like that. Now obviously, he was sort of going for, he's trying to make the floors a little more interesting, so he made these little missing tiles. So that's great. I'm not gonna, complain about those. Sometimes you can sacrifice build for some nice details, but that's just an example. That little area could have been one solid cube that the engine has to render, just this one cube, but instead with these little tiles, breaks it up into many more. Alright, I'm going to give one more example and then we'll wrap this thing up. This is another one of my maps that I happened to come across a pretty good example of this. As you can see, I need to texture the underside of this lip, but when I do it with a smaller cube size than what the wall is actually made of, it cuts it into, cuts it in half. So what I end up doing is undoing and then I use a larger grid size that is the size of the wall there, and then I texture, and it keeps that size of that cube. Alright, so thanks for watching, and hopefully you learned something here.